Welcome back to the TowerCast podcast, the Towering Podcast for filmmakers, by filmmakers here of El Paso and the world. We're very happy to be back. We do two podcasts on this podcast network, which is the Watchtower Film Podcast. We'll get together, we'll review films. The next film we're going to review is actually our guest today is on that film as well, which we'll kind of talk about a little later. But we're back on the TowerCast. Love talking to filmmakers, love talking to different storytellers, and very happy to be back in studio. I got to introduce my fellow co-host, Mr. Michael Lalo.
Hello, guys. I'm here to give the cinematography perspective, as always.
Mr. John Eric Castro.
I'm here to give the actor's perspective with one of the great actors.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Austin Young, make sure we're sounding and looking good in the back there.
Howdy, gentlemen.
And without further ado, we're going to introduce a gentleman who has just been the sweetest to us. We've heard far and beyond that he's just has a sweet soul, but also a very talented individual. That's an understatement. I mean, we've been a big fan of his all around for a very long time, and I'm so excited to talk.
We had a long list. We had to cutting it up because it's a long list.
He's regarded as an interesting kind of take that a lot of people will kind of pawn on him, which is the most famous actor you've never seen, which is an interesting way to think about something. But we're talking to the amazing, very talented, the very versatile, and the very sweet Doug Jones.
Doug Jones.
Doug, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. How you doing?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And unfortunately, this is the face you get today, nothing with rubber on it.
No, that's beautiful.
It's great. It's great. We were supposed to connect with Doug when he came out to El Paso, or we did connect with him when he came to El Paso on the Oculto Film Festival, which he was a special guest. Unfortunately for us, this was during the strikes, and we couldn't get Doug in person on the show. But he was so sweet to say, "Hey, strikes are on. As soon as the strikes are done, I got to strike with my brothers and sisters and make sure we get this going. But as soon as they're done, I'd love to do it on Zoom or however we can make it possible." And here we are. Doug was kind enough to even offer that. He didn't have to do that and decided. So thank you for that, Doug, for being on.
Well, thank you for honoring that the strike too. It was a tough time to because I had to say no to a lot of interviews that wanted to do a review of my entire career. Well, that means mentioning characters and titles of movies that were made by studios that we were striking against. So it made for a weird time for all of us. So I'm glad that's over now.
Yeah, Are you based in Los Angeles, Doug, or is it? Were you kind of in
Los Angeles?
Yeah, okay. And how was that experience for you, just in person, being either on the picket lines or just having to say no to things? Unfortunately, how was that? Let's kick off a little bit and then talk about that.
Well, I am in Los Angeles, but I actually during the strike, I stayed very busy with live appearances. I flew all over the country. El Paso was one of them. When I was there for a Oculto Film Festival, but I did several film festivals, several fan conventions, and just had to stay off camera for all of them. And then speaking engagements. I even taught a workshop at a haunted house in Chicago during that time.
Wow.
So I was not able to do the picket lines here in LA.
But you stayed busy. I mean, as much as you possibly could. Yeah.
Thankfully, thanks to all of us out there who had me come for some reason or another.
I mean, we're fans, right? Especially in El Paso, and everybody was. I mean, you were the talk of the town. You were the talk of the town when you came out. I got to ask, how was your experience in El Paso? How did you feel out here?
It was fantastic. Yeah, I've driven through El Paso many a time on I-10.
Most people do. That's how they find us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this time I actually, stayed for a minute, and it was great. It was really great. Lovely people, and your local film commissioner had a long chat with him at one of the after parties.
Great. Drew's beautiful. He's a good friend of ours. He's amazing. Yeah.
Great. We're a lovely guy. Yeah. And nice to see that there is filmmaking happening between there and Las Cruces. You've got crew people and very talented people.
Oh, absolutely.
But I had a trip to your zoo.
Okay.
That was for some. I don't know if they were a sponsor or whatever, but while I was in town, they opened up early for me and the whole gaggle of people from Oculto Film Festival, and we had got a private tour. I got to go backstage behind the cages, and I got to feed a giraffe. That was probably the best thing I've ever done.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah, by hand with lettuce leaves. It was amazing.
Very cool.
I also got to feed an elephant and pet her little tusk, and she just an amazing beast. Yeah. So yeah. So I didn't expect that to happen during a film festival weekend.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was great.
That's an experience, right? No, I'm happy you had a good time in here. We're happy that you not only, had a good time and enjoyed the experience, but also it's very refreshing and it's very uplifting for us when individuals such as yourself who do have their footprint in the industry say, hey, something special is going on in El Paso, and we appreciate that. We have a very unique geography, right? Not only we're connected with Las Cruces, who's very active in the film scene, but also Juarez, Chihuahua. Mexico is our sister city as well, and we're very active, and we love what we do, and we love cinema, we love storytelling. So we're very appreciative when individuals such as yourself recognize that. So thank you for that. Hopefully, you saw something that will encourage you to come back to El Paso.
Oh yeah, and I met a lot of filmmakers in the area that are quite talented too. So you don't have to live in LA or New York to pull that off.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So we love to kick this podcast off with the single question: what kicked off your storytelling journey? How did you start your storytelling journey? How did you know you wanted to be a storyteller?
Where did that fire start?
Oh gosh, when I was a young boy in Indianapolis, Indiana, watching TV, kind of goofy looking kid, long skinny neck. Not much has changed, by the way.
Were you always tall?
Always tall. I was the tallest in my class and the skinniest. And watching like reruns of the Dick Van Dyke Show or Mary Tyler Moore or the Carol Burnett Show was live and running at the time. Sketch comedy, musicals, anytime they ran a movie on TV of Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin, Danny Kaye, or even seeing old silent films of Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton. I was like, wait a second. And then TV series like Gilligan's Island, Gomer Pyle, sitcoms and funny things and musical things made me happy and made me feel good and saw people on screen that kind of resembled the goofiness that I am. And I'm like, hey, maybe that's where I can live one day in that TV set. So that's why I thought, so I pursued the showbiz from early on and did stage productions in all my schools and minored in theater in college at Ball State University and discovered the art of mime at Ball State too. And joining a mime troupe called Mime Over Matter, little play on words.
Great.
And at the same time, and two years of my college degree were spent also being the school mascot. I was Charlie Cardinal in a big red bird suit.
Oh wow!
But little did I know that the mime troupe that I was in and the mascot performances were preparing me for a career that was going to be what I have become. Someone who uses his body from head to toe to tell a story, short or long. Right.
Absolutely. How was your experience with your family in those? I mean, we're fellow artists, right? We know we like to joke around that when we tell people we're filmmakers or that we're actively seeking to do this full time, to do this as a living. They look at us like we want to be astronauts. I mean, we actively kind of tell that to each other. What was that experience for you to say, hey, I want to go into TV, I want to go into acting and performing?
Oh, same. Yeah. When you're in the middle of Indiana and you say, I want to be a film actor, your parents go, what else would you like to do?
What's the backup plan?
Right. So, and by the way, with the odds of being an actor who can supply or can do enough work to have a full-time income,
exactly,
those odds are against us. And the percentage of people in the Screen Actors Guild who can support themselves full-time from acting is like, there's 90% who can't.
Yeah.
So if your parents know that, they're gonna try to dissuade you away from that.
Right. And
rightly so. I understand. I totally get their sensibilities.
Yeah.
So, but when the art lives in you, and when the desire is there and the talent is there, if you have God-given talent, it's kind of your responsibility to pursue using it and see what might come of it. So that's why the move out to Los Angeles at the time, in the 80s, 1985 is when I moved out here.
How old were you at the time?
I was 24, a few months before I turned 25. Yeah. And I already thought that I'd missed the boat, because I felt like if I hadn't started, gathering film and TV credits by 16, 18, then I'm washed up.
That's how I felt. As a director, writer, I'm like, man, I did this too late. I should have done this in high school. I should have been making short films. And
if I had DP'd my first feature when I was 6 years old, I would be so well off by now. But no,
right. But then you look at actors like Morgan Freeman, who didn't start until he was gray haired. There is no age. There's no rules. There's absolutely no rules. If you have talent and you have a look that sells, you can use it at any time. That's what I believe.
And speaking of income, what was that first job that maybe it wasn't necessarily your first paid gig, but the first thing where you said, "Oh, I can do this." The first thing that gave you confidence that you were like, "I could do this."
Yeah. Oh, well, oh golly. I mean, the first thing I did in Los Angeles on film was a student film for a USC film student. And just the rave reviews that he gave me, and he was quite a talented little young filmmaker. And just, yeah, the way the crew responded to me and watched what I did and were like, "Oh my gosh, that was hilarious." Or, "Oh my gosh, that was good." That was the encouragement that I needed to keep going.
Yeah.
And then I took a TV commercial acting class just to see if I could do commercials. And the instructor of that class was the head agent at Wilhelmina, the West Coast office of Wilhelmina, which is a huge modeling agency in New York. In LA, they had a TV commercial department that was in the top 10 in the city.
Sure.
So to fall into his hands, and in my second acting class there, he said, "Do you have an agent yet?" And I said, "I don't know what an agent is." So he said, here's my card. Call me at the office. And I did. I met everybody there. We all fell in love with each other. And so I started going out on TV commercial auditions. And I started booking those about 6 months in. Beautiful. And so my very first paid gig was a Southwest Airlines commercial.
Wow.
Which flies direct from LA to El Paso, by the way.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I found that out during the film festival.
Oh, okay.
But
that's fairly new, by the way. As someone, we tried to when we're doing pitch meetings or we're going out there for different things or just, even vacationing. Before it was always connecting to Phoenix or Vegas or something. And now, now you're right. We got a direct flight, which,
Yeah. So anyway, so from there, I was a dancing mummy in this Southwest Airlines commercial. It ran during the summertime fun fairs, and then went dark during the year, and then came back again and again. They kept that commercial alive for many years, and I kept getting holding fees and residual checks. I'm like, gosh, that's a good thing.
Those residual checks.
But then a couple months after I booked that first one, I did a commercial as an alien it was a doll commercial for Worlds of Wonder Toy Company, and the creature effects people that turned me into an alien in that commercial, we all fell in love with each other, got along well, worked well together. And I started establishing that reputation of a tall, skinny guy with some movement background who can make a creature come to life who does not complain during the process. That's a big one.
Yes.
Because we actors are known for being a little bit of divas. Like, this is hot and heavy. Can you get this off me?
Oh, yeah.
How long is this going to take?
Guilty.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So if you don't do that, they think you are so nice and want to work with you again and again. So those same creature people then were doing just like a month after I did that Alien commercial, the Mac Tonight campaign for McDonald's was being developed by McDonald's.
Oh, okay.
It was a crescent moon head that went on to an actor.
Yeah.
I sang at a piano like, "When the clock strikes, hey!" And he was very, nightclub guy, cool cat. And the same creature effects people that did my Alien commercial were fabricating the moon head with all of its puppeteering motors and gears in it. And they, during the casting process, when I got to a callback, they were asked, like, "Do you know any of these actors?" And they were like, "Oh, the tall one, Doug Jones. Yeah, we just worked with him." And so that helped get me that gig, which turned into a 27 commercial campaign that lasted for 3 years.
Whoa.
That was the gig that I could buy my first house.
Jackpot.
Yes.
Wow.
Beautiful. It's as they say, I think even in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Leo's character says it's only when you have real estate out here that you could say, "I'm an actor, I'm an LA actor," right? So once you kind of plant your feet out there, you could say, "Okay, I'm doing this.
It happened. Yeah.
I gotta ask. Well, I'm hearing all this. When you were coming up, did you have a role model or somebody that took you under their wing, show you the ropes, or did you just figure it all out by yourself?
That's a great question, because I can't really pinpoint one person that was like guided me along the way.
There was a couple?
Nobody was doing what I was doing that I had contact with anyway.
Oh, okay.
And at that time, the creature effects shops were doing monsters for horror movies a lot, maybe, and science fiction, maybe, but there weren't any actors that were notable in that field.
Sure.
Like the movie star monster was like the black and white Universal days, with Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi. And then there was a lull in those monsters being famous. Yeah. At some point, the horror films became teenagers in underwear running away from the monster.
Right.
The teenagers were the story, and the monster was just like, nah.
Right.
So, and Freddy Krueger might have been what he had some notoriety, and Robert Englund got some notoriety.
The slasher era, right, of the horror. Right.
But other than Robert Englund, I can't really, off the top of my head, think of a whole lot of name actors that we know of because of those movies.
Yeah.
So I didn't have anybody that I could contact. Wow. There was no social media back then. She couldn't go, hey, so and so, give me some pointers.
Yeah,
didn't have that.
Wow.
So there was an actor who had been in the Blues Brothers movie. He was one of the cops that was chasing them throughout the entire film. His name was Armand Sarami.
Okay.
And he worked with my wife at an advertising agency. He had kind of left the business.
Oh, okay.
And when she said, my husband wants to be an actor, he's like, I'll go to lunch with him and talk to him about the, So that was like a memory that I'll never forget. Is this nice older actor fellow from the past that had enough credits to call himself so. Yeah. Took me to lunch and he paid. I was like, whoa.
The big thing.
And he just kind of told me how he started and how what advice he might give me, and so I only met him the one time, but I've never forgotten him because that was such an act of kindness on his part that he did not have to do. So I saw in my later years now I've kind of become that guy. I've met with a lot of young actors along the way. If they show some promise and some potential.
You got one more here, Doug, right here.
I'll take the seat and listen to you. Pick your brain a little bit.
Sure. Well, it's been picked clean, but if there's anything left,
hey, I'll take the scraps.
It's important to know. You mentioned the kind of universal classic monsters individuals, kind of who made a name for themselves there. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you never set out to be "quote unquote" a horror guy, right? You just wanted to be an actor, and definitely comedy drew some sensibilities to and stuff like that. But so were those types of individuals you're kind of your heroes later? Did they become an influence once you started getting into that world, or were you just a student of all, do you think?
Yeah, no, I paid more attention to my memories of Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi when the monsters started coming for me. Because all the monster roles that I've done have come looking for me as opposed to me really campaigning to get them. Because I really, honestly, you're right. To be a side character, like a supporting next door neighbor on a sitcom, that's all I wanted.
I pictured, I read that about you, and I pictured you'd be fit perfectly as a quote unquote a Kramer on Seinfeld, right? That's kind of the character you wanted to be. Yeah, that could have been interesting. But then we wouldn't have gotten all the amazing characters that we got from you, which I want to kind of go into. Narratively, what did you feel was like, okay, I'm getting recommended for things. I've done the commercial thing. What was the narrative role that you feel was like, okay, cool? Or I'm sure it just kind of started tagging along and stacking up on roll for these creatures, right? But what was the first kind of character that narratively you thought, okay, I'm really liking this. I can do this. I would say when major feature films started getting when I started getting their attention, I was a sidekick character in the Red Triangle Circus Gang in Batman Returns. Didn't have a whole lot of screen time. I was in 6 different scenes with Danny DeVito as Penguin, and I was one of his sidekicks. Nice. In that clown group, the skinny clown, right? Skinny clown. That's right.
Right. So that whole experience was like, wow, this a major movie has a lot of money. Yeah. And and it was going to have wide distribution, and still to this day, Batman Returns has been a favorite of the Batman fans.
This was Burton's, Tim Burton's Batman, so you got to work along Tim Burton. I'm surprised Tim Burton hasn't casted you in more things. I mean, it seems like
right. And if there was a director out there that I'd love to work with again and get more one-on-one time with him on set, it would be Tim Burton.
It'd be Tim Burton. Okay,
that's the man. Yeah.
Did you guys get to chat at all on set while you were there? Did you get to pick his brain a little bit, or? Yeah,
a bit. Well, when I kind of got cast again I didn't go through the typical casting channels to get my role in Batman Returns. A stunt man friend of mine was working with the stunt coordinator,
Right.
and because there was a circus theme to the Red Triangle Circus Gang, he was finding them. My friend Bob Yerkes had a circus background, so he had access to high wire people and jugglers and sword swallowers and that kind of thing.
Whoa!
And he knew that I could put my legs behind my head, so he called me a contortionist and referred me to the stunt department.
Nice. Okay.
Wow.
So I went to meet with the stunt coordinator off of a referral, thinking that I was just going to do a sight gag in the movie for a day and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went into the stunt coordinator's office, he said, "Okay, Doug, hey, thanks for coming in. Show me what you can do." So I started,
Yeah.
And he's like, hang on here for a second. I want you to show that to somebody else. He leaves the room and comes back in with Tim freaking Burton. And this is in an office building on the Warner Brothers lot.
Okay.
It was a very quiet day. And so now I'm meeting Tim Burton. So I wet my pants. And then I said,
Rightfully
okay,
so. Yeah.
so, this is our director, Tim. Show him what you just showed me. And then Tim said, "Oh, wow. Well, here, hang on here for a second. We're going to go into the next room and talk about you for just a minute." Okay?
Oh, wow.
So he did, and they come. That's the most tense 2 minutes of my life. I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, arguably the biggest director, at least in the mainstream, essentially of the time. I mean, he had done
at
quite.
that time. Are you kidding me? Yeah,
Tim Burton.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
This was 1990. I'm going to say 1992.
Sure. Yeah, right.
Or the end of 91.
91.
That this was happening. So they come back in the room and Tim Burton says, "Well, congratulations, you got the part." I'm like, "The part? What's the part?" So there was a scripted thin clown that actually at the time that the script went through many changes, but at the time I had a full page of back and forth dialogue with someone. I can't remember who it was now. Before something happened, and Michelle Pfeiffer was going to kill me as Catwoman by lowering herself on a string, and her legs were going to come around my neck and strangle me. That was anybody's dream,
right?
But,
right. Michelle Pfeiffer. I mean,
right. Thank you. So anyway, that was all rewritten and redone. I stayed alive at the end of the movie because Tim Burton took a liking to me and he kept me around. I was contracted for a 7-week contract, and he kept me around for 14 weeks. That was very sweet of him to do.
And that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was shot entirely on the Warner Brothers lot, right? I mean, that was you were on the lot for 7 weeks essentially, or
yes, we were.
What a dream!
We also borrowed a larger soundstage from Universal.
Okay.
But they were right next to it, door to each other, so it was easy.
So did you feel like that? I mean, that's just hearing it. I'm not an actor, but even as a writer director, I love when I go to LA. I have to go to the Warner lot. I have to go to the Paramount lot. I have to feel that history, that energy kind of course through my veins, right? But you get to work there. You have a contract to be on the lot. You have a drive on, at the gate. What's that first kind of feeling like,
No, that's, I can hear that old song. Hooray for Hollywood. Every time I go onto a big lot like that, because they all, like you said, are steeped with so much history and from the golden era, right? You can't miss it.
Nope.
So and when I have like if I'm working outside on a soundstage, there outside that soundstage are a whole bunch of trailers where our dressing trailers are, and our private rooms. And if I'm sitting there with my door open and you see a tour trolley go by with a bunch of people from Minnesota going
hoping to get
oh, it's fantastic because I'll often wave at them and they're like, no, so it's great fun because it reminds you that the entire world has eyeballs on the film industry,
and that's why we love you.
And we do make a difference,
yes.
Out there, good or bad, I don't know, but
no, but just the waving factor alone, just the fact that you acknowledge and you engage. I mean, most people won't.
Exactly.
The biggest thing we've learned on this podcast is, a lot of great individuals have given us the advice of like, reach for the top shelf, man, because they have nothing to prove. They don't have to be jerks to you. They've already proved themselves in the industry to a certain extent, and we also get the people who tell us don't meet your heroes because you'll be a little disappointed sometimes. But it's that that action that encourages us to be like, oh, there are nice people in Hollywood that actually care about the the art and not necessarily the commerce of it. They care about telling stories and they care about connecting with creatives. And man, those have been the open doors for us as the individuals like that. So thank you for that wave, because that symbolically means a lot to us.
You were waving to him this whole time.
Yeah.
Really. Well, that's what I felt in my heart. Yeah. Well, it is easy to get tempted by notoriety. Notoriety will tempt you into thinking that you're bigger than you are. And if you, for me, I have to remember that I'm the tall, skinny, goofy teenager from Indiana. Dougie Jones has never left me.
Dougie Jones.
And I didn't get name recognition in the industry until I was in my 40s. Nobody really knew who I was until then. Had it happened for me at 21, I may have had a different attitude toward myself.
That's such a good perspective to have.
Yeah. But by the time you're 46 years old and you're finally getting, articles written about you and you're going to the Oscars for the first time, it's like, you know what, fame is fickle and it can come and go as fast as, as the mailman.
Yeah.
So I don't want to ever get full. I need to be defined by something else.
Sure.
My family, my faith in God, my friends, my hobbies, there's so much that goes into me that is not showbiz, and I need to remember that.
Wow, that's amazing advice. I mean, I can't tell you how much we've been lucky enough to work with individuals of notoriety and have been, have won some awards for certain shorts and for this and that. And, you get used to, thankfully, I don't think any of us have gotten the big head because we care more about the longevity of being able to tell stories for the rest of our lives, as opposed to getting a variety article that people are going to forget about next week. I mean, that's such a huge thing to learn, I think, for creatives out there.
Can I ask
I'm sorry. I just went to a film screening the other day. Someone that I knew socially on the social medias. Hey, we're going to be in LA doing a little premiere for our movie. I'm not going to tell you what. They spent so much time in the marketing and promotion and the events and the pictures and hey, we're doing this thing. And then you watch the movie and it's like they didn't invest in the art. They did not invest their time or money in the art. They invested it all in the show. And so I fear for what's going to happen to that movie now.
We before I let Michael here ask you the question he wants to ask you. I just want to touch on that and piggyback and say we just finished a short back in November. Finished shooting, I should say. We're still in post, and we were lucky enough to get a small grant, and this small grant was like a $3,000 grant for a 25-person crew and 2 cast members, and these 2 cast members have had great credits. We got essentially Eller Coltrane, who was the lead in Boyhood, in Richard Linklater's Boyhood, and he came out and did this thing for us. And and thankfully during the strikes we could do shorts, and they couldn't get penalized, and we couldn't get in trouble, and there was just a way to keep the blood flowing, right? Exactly. And essentially, and Jessica Meraz, who also lives in LA, and she's from El Paso, but she was in I think you may have crossed paths once upon a time on the Warner Brother lot, because she was I know you did some episodes of Arrow and The Flash, and she was on Supergirl, and she was on just a bunch of those kind of shows, the CW shows, and Nancy Drew, and she's garnered some credits, but they were kind enough to come out and do this thing with us, and we spent every penny of that on the craft, on our sets, on our cast, and we as crew didn't even pay ourselves because we care about the story that we're trying to tell. And I got to tell you, Doug, it's such a rewarding feeling because sure, the insecurities of an artist, you're looking up at your film and you're like, what the hell did I just do? But at the same time, you say, hey, I spent every single penny and minute trying to make this film to the best ability that we could. So it's so encouraging to hear that that's the way to go. The validation of the art, not necessarily the industry per se. Michael, you had something you wanted to
man, no, you
I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier.
No, you put too much of a gap in between. It wasn't even going to be a crazy question. Now I feel intimidated. I'm getting a pee shot. But no, you mentioned the things that ground you, your friends, your family, and you said hobbies. I cannot imagine what your hobbies are, being a mime, a contortionist, like with everything you've mentioned, everything you've done. What are the hobbies? What's the away from the 9 to 5?
He looks like he golfs.
You golf, Doug?
I do not golf. Oh gosh, I tried that one time, and I ended up taking a nature hike through the golf course. I saw the sand, the water, the forest. I saw all of it.
That's great.
But no, I mean, Well, a hobby. I mean, now that I'm in my 60s, spending time with the family, with the daughter, the grandson, also, I do love to rollerblade down on Venice Beach, but I haven't done that in years.
Oh, wow.
But I also, you get this. I also cut hair.
You're
really?
hair.
Yeah, yeah. I've been cutting my own hair since I was in the 7th grade. Now today's not the day to judge that. But
wow.
I've done that
So I get so productions feel pretty good about. Oh, Doug, we don't have to pay for a hair person for Doug. He's got it. Is that what it is?
Honestly, every credit that I have as a human being in on my IMDb, and there's quite a few.
Absolutely.
I've been playing humans all along. But all of them are my own haircut and color. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So while everybody during the pandemic was freaking out because now we have to cut our hair, Doug was like, I got this.
this.
It's fine.
And then calling his family, like, anybody want a haircut? I got you. Come on over.
That's right. That's right.
So those are some of the things you just enjoy. I have to ask just that, we're fellow cinephiles. Like I said, we have another podcast where we just literally will tear through some bucket list films and talk about them and stuff like that. Are there any films you just like to sit back and watch and that bring you some happiness?
Do you have a favorite film?
Yes. Okay. If you're asking like what one DVD would I take with me to a deserted island?
Exactly.
That would be Somewhere in Time. It's you guys are too young to know this one. It's
I'm surprised Carlos doesn't know.
I'm not familiar with this. Oh, don't get me wrong, Doug. Don't be fooled. I screened Federico Fellini pictures for these guys, Akira Kurosawa. Like we tear through some and classic Hollywood stuff as well. Billy Wilder. I mean, we love it. So please enlighten us.
Okay.
What is this picture?
Somewhere in Time, 1980.
Okay.
1980.
And it's a love story that involves time travel. Christopher Reeve goes back in time to meet Jane Seymour off of an old sepia tone photo that he finds of her.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no, it's I could watch it again and again.
We gotta have a screen.
Yeah, we will.
Cool.
We will.
Yeah.
We'll put it on the list for the podcast. We'll
For
cover
sure.
that one. That's a great one. I think that we connected recently over another film, All That Jazz, which I think us as artists could all kind of connect with from that era as well. A little newer per se from what we tend to talk about, but just I figured you for a Bob Fosse fan per se.
Oh,
yeah. Awesome.
hands.
Yeah. Any other films you feel like you'd mentioned that are honorable mentions or just something like to?
Yeah, you have a second island, a second DVD.
Okay, great. I might take Grease with me from 1978.
Grease.
Okay.
Yes,
That's a
John
good pick.
Travolta, Olivia Newton-John.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, I saw that 10 times in the theater when they were all playing high school seniors in that movie.
Right.
They were all 30 something, but anyway, I was actually graduating from high school that summer, and that's when the movie came out. So it was my time of, they were representing my time of life.
Right.
You and my wife, Doug, will get a. That's one of her favorite films ever. I watched that once a while. So please tell Sarah. My wife's name is Sandra. Next time you're in El Paso, we'll have a Grease screening. I promise you.
Okay.
I'm a big musical fan, and she's a big Grease fan. It's perfect. We make it work
Beautiful.
that way. So Grease is a great one. Grease is
And I can keep going down deserted islands here. I would also
please
I had to
pretend we're letterboxed.
I had to puddle jump from one deserted island.
Yeah.
I would take Meet Joe Black with me.
Oh,
Oh
sure.
wow. Never heard that one.
Take Waking Ned Divine.
I've never heard
It's
of
an
it.
Irish story about a bunch of old people. It is hilarious and wonderful. I would take Notting Hill with me. Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant.
You grab
Have I got had them? And Love Actually.
Oh,
It's a
yes.
Great ensemble piece.
Love it.
That's a
It's
Christmas favorite.
been one of my favorite Christmas films to watch for the longest time. That director, I mean, Richard Curtis, right? I love About Time is one of my favorite films. I really love that picture. I really love.
I don't know About Time.
Oh, please screen it. It's a time travel film, but very unorthodox the way they approach it. Yeah.
Okay.
And not in the great Scott sense of the word, but a little more grounded. But it's a beautiful picture. I highly recommend it. Same director as Love Actually. I highly recommend that one.
Good reference.
Well, I'm gonna love it.
But jumping back into your career,
Yes,
right? Because
yes.
this is what we're.
My career, whatever. Yeah.
I know.
No,
Pulling
trust
you
me.
back from the
If
island.
you allow us to, Doug, we will go on and on about our
Yes,
favorite
I have a
films.
million questions.
But I really want to touch on something that I connect with a lot as a writer director, and it's the relationship between actors. I want to spend as much time as I possibly can without taking everybody else's time. But you obviously have had a very fruitful, very just based on interviews I've seen, very expansive And it seems like a very dear relationship with Guillermo Del Toro, one of our heroes. Guillermo is a Mexican director. We're Mexican Americans from El Paso. We're Mexicans from El Paso. And es un paisano for us. He's a very iconic hero for us, Guillermo Del Toro. And we love his pictures and your performance in his pictures. Can you tell me a little bit about that relationship and that connection? I know Mimic, if I'm not mistaken, was the first kind of time you connected, but please tell us everything in awe about that relationship because we love it.
Well, I'm going to say, how much time do you really have?
As much time as you have. Yeah.
Because, he's my favorite director I have ever worked with and always will be. No one else can compete. For first, I'll give second place out, but never first. That's
nice.
Yeah, you're right. I met him in 1997 when he was working on Mimic, which was his first American studio film.
Right.
After he had already had quite a career in Mexico with Spanish language products.
Kronos.
I think Kronos was the movie he had done right before that, and he brought Ron Perlman into that one. So we have that connection for later as well.
Yeah.
But on Mimic, I was kind of brought in as a just during reshoots. The tall, skinny Canadian boy. They filmed Mimic in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
And the tall, skinny Canadian who played the big bug guys called Long Johns was not. It was going to take a lot to get him to do the reshoots, the pickup shots in Los Angeles.
Okay.
They would have to fly him, get a work permit because he's out of the country. They'd have to get fly him, hotel him, per diem him, and salary him. So what's our cheaper option? So the tall, skinny Rolodex comes out.
Sure.
And let's call Doug. So that's how I got the call to come down and do. I ended up doing 3 days on Mimic, and I just kind of doing fill in. When you're doing pickup shots, you're not getting a full scene, and you're getting like insert shots basically that help fill out a scene that was already filmed. So I had no point of context for that. I had no idea what the movie. I didn't see a script, nothing, and didn't know who Guillermo Del Toro was. So here he is. Directing me from my first night. I was on the top of a 4-story brick building with a rain machine hitting me in this bug, sort of human-y bug looking costume. And all he wanted me to do was lean over the edge and look down. And I did it, and it was great. So I hear this from a megaphone way down on the ground, and that's all I saw. So I came in the next day to do close-ups in front of a green screen in a studio. And that's when Guillermo sat across the table from me at lunchtime and put his chin in his hands and said, so tell me everything you've been in before. So I'm like, wow, okay. So I gave him some filmography and then he interrupted me constantly going, no, was that Stan Winston did that? Yeah. Was that Tony Gardner? Was that Greg Canham? All of the creature effects makeup artists, he knew all of them or knew of all of them. And had been following their work and had been admiring their work, and he really wanted to know what were they like as people, and was that a good experience? And we're both geeking out over creepy crawly monsters.
Yeah. What's important to note, and I don't mean to interrupt you, it's important to note that for those who don't know about Guillermo del Toro, he's a creature feature guy, and not just his films, but a fan. And if I'm not mistaken, his favorite film is Freaks. And in his house in LA, if you guys haven't seen that YouTube video, he has like a plethora of the actual models from different memorabilia from different films like that and stuff like that. I read somewhere that I think that's a separate house from even his actual living house. Like his wife was like, dude, get all this stuff out of here. I don't want it in my house. And he has a whole separate house where it's his office, his writing office and stuff like that. Right. But he's a big fan. He geeks out over stuff like that. So that's amazing that he just went off in that kind of tangent. Right.
Right. Yeah, that was his Bleak House, and a lot of his personal art collection from Bleak House went on tour around museums.
Oh wow!
It was called. I think the exhibit was called "At Home with Monsters" by Guillermo del Toro.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah. So no, he's renowned for loving his monsters, and he did his own creature effects makeup work down in Mexico when he was starting. He was putting his own productions together, and he created his own monsters and played some of them on film as he directed himself, produced himself. He's dabbled in every department on a film set. And that is another thing that makes him a fantastic director, is that he really has an empathy for everybody's job on set and knows what challenges they're going to face. And when something comes up, instead of just being a tyrant who says, well, fix it. He wants to get in there with you and help. Well, what can I do to help? And I understand what happened here. So, he's lovely. So we kept in touch after that lunchtime on Mimic. And well, I mean, I say he took my card, I should say, and left it in his wallet. And 5 years later had gone by. 5 years gone by, I had collected some more credits of my own, and I get another random phone call from a Creature Effects house saying, "Hey, we have a director here who says he knows you, and your name came up in a meeting today. Can you come meet us?" And that was for Abe Sapien in the Hellboy movies.
Wow.
So, and legend had it that they had revealed him. They had revealed the look of Abe Sapien to him that earlier that day, unveiling a maquette of Abe Sapien. It was a little statue,
wow.
what he would look like. And everybody in the room had worked with me before, and they were all like, "You know who should play this is Doug Jones." And Guillermo said, "Doug Jones, I know Doug Jones." And he pulled
That's so cool.
my card out of his wallet. 5 years
amazing.
later.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why I got the call for that. And then so the Hellboy movie, Hellboy 1, really is that's where we bonded more. That's where we really had more time together to establish that director actor working relationship, and we developed a shorthand where we just don't have to talk a whole bunch. I know what he wants when he grunts, and likewise he knows he'll what buttons to push on me to get something, an alteration or an adjustment on set. He's brilliant, just brilliant. Yeah, so then,
I can imagine. I want to pause a little bit there on the Hellboy, because I think it's important to know, and you've said this publicly before, so I hope it's not a sore subject by any means, but the voiceover factor, right? I mean, the voiceover factor of Hellboy that ended up kind of continuing into Pan's Labyrinth for more logistical reasons, but I want everybody listening to this podcast, and we recognize that we had a whole conversation about this, that you're an actor. You're not a suit actor or a suit performer. You're an actor. You're an artist.
Yes.
And it's important to know. We try to recognize that on our own sets, that it's a beautiful collaborative medium, and we're all artists, and we're all here to do, essentially here for the same goal. So why shouldn't an actor be recognized for that, and not kind of dwindle to the suit guy or this guy? That no, he's and Guillermo seems to have recognized that right away. Doug Jones is a beautiful, beautiful actor. So I want to touch a little bit on that, just on how maybe that affected you as an artist, to have a studio maybe for the first time come in and say, "I have a note on that. We need a name. We needed this. We needed that."
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's important for also people listening at home to know that happens, and we got to know how to react to it, right?
Right. Well, I would have balked and squawked a lot more, but I walked into the Hellboy movie with that idea already being in place. Guillermo told me on the day that I met with him, the studio has already said they would like to have an A-list named person to voice this role. And there was already a list. I think they had 3 people already on deck to consider: Kevin Spacey, Steve Buscemi, and David Hyde Pierce, who was at the height of his Frasier fame at the time.
Yes.
And so I was like, I would really rather you not do that. If I'm going to play the role, I'd like to just play the role without that looming over me that someone else might voice it. And he said, "Well, it's already been kind of, we can add your name to the list." He said, if you give us the sound and the voice that we need for it, then, the chance is there. Yeah. So that wasn't ideal to work in a situation where that was the one drawback of filming Hellboy 1 was just the looming threat that my voice might be replaced by somebody more famous than me. And sure enough, when it was all said and done, I was the first one brought in to do the ADR voice looping to fix my dialogue and add some additional lines here and there, whatever an ADR session includes. And the sound engineer that day, that had no reason to do this, he had no obligation. He caught me in the hallway when I was on a bathroom break and said, "Doug, I just want to tell you, you sound amazing. This character is so complete. So you're doing a great job." And that was really, so I drove home from that session thinking they don't need to look any further. I'm the one. Yep. And then two weeks later, I got a call from Guillermo himself. He was very kind to call me before it came on trades.
Yeah.
That David Hyde Pierce had replaced my voice. And so that was kind of I was crushed, I'm not going to lie about it, because it was in the English language, and I can act and speak in English really well, I think. So, so to be replaced, have that part of your performance replaced, it doesn't feel good.
Of course.
But I love David Hyde Pierce, and he was a real gentleman about this whole process. I never met David in person, but I was told that he came in to do his voiceover session, and saw my work on film and heard me in his ear from what I'd done vocally, and he wasn't sure why he was there, and he said so. So that was very kind of him. And so once his job was done, I really do think he did a great job. He declined taking a credit in the film. Now it's on IMDb, but when you look at the film itself, he does not show up in the main titles. He does not show up in the rolling credits.
Wow.
He didn't take credit for it. And when he was asked why, he said it's out of respect to Doug Jones.
Respect.
Which,
That's beautiful.
He did not have to.
It sounds like just your performance, your kind of sensibilities really did rub off on people, and they just liked you as an actor. They liked you as an individual, because I'd like to think that as a director, I would do the same. I'd like to think that if the studio is barking at my ear about something, I'm going to go to my DP or my actor and say, hey, we got to do this. This is, as opposed to letting you find out on the Hollywood Reporter that you're being replaced. Right. So that's huge, I think. And I don't mean to, hark on Del Toro being a great personality or anything like that. But I think that's very important. And for David Hyde Pierce to do the same, I mean, you must have made a true impression to be able to do that.
Oh yeah,
that's huge.
Yeah, and so whenever I do meet David Hyde, he's going to get a kiss right here from me, because it was just a sweet thing to do.
Yeah. It's important to bridge the gap too, right? Of it's Del Toro, quote unquote, did good on his promise for the sequel. If right, because in that phone call when he called me to say that my voice had been replaced, he said, if we get a chance to do a Hellboy 2, I'll keep your voice for that one. Okay,
and he did make good on that. And between Hellboy 1 and 2 came the 2 animated films, Hellboy Sword of Storms and Hellboy Blood and Iron. And so I voiced that. That was kind of a buffer test zone. And the audience really responded well to it.
Proof of concept, as you will, right? Before we move on from Hellboy, which, because I want to get into a plethora of other films, but your experience working with Ron Perlman, how was that? Talk a little bit about, we're going to, fingers crossed, quote unquote, don't quote me on this, viewers, we're going to meet Ron. He's coming out to the Las Cruces International Film Festival to receive an award. And typically when we're out there, they like to ask us to bring our podcasting equipment and talk to the guests. That's how we got to connect with people like William H. Macy and Melissa Barrera and Giancarlo Esposito. And they're bringing Ron out. So we're gonna get his side of the story too, I hope. But okay. What was that experience like working with somebody like Ron Perlman?
Oh, I've been a fan of his for since Beauty and the Beast, his TV series.
Yeah.
And we instantly clicked into Big Brother Little Brother mode. Okay. And he's 10 years older than me, and he's kind of I define him as the sweetest grump I've ever known.
The sweetest grump,
and he owns his grumpiness. He's well aware of
at least.
It's kind of a part of his persona. He's very funny about it too. His sense of humor is very sarcastic. And he even said when we were filming Hellboy 2, he said, you and I really do represent our characters in real life. So I'm kind of a Hellboy and you're kind of an Abe Sapien. I'm like, I think you're right.
That's beautiful.
I heard on an interview, just trying to do our research here, that you mentioned something. I wonder if you guys connect or even talk about it nowadays, on the fact that Ron, I think this is my interpretation. I don't know if you guys agree, that Ron Perlman is recognized for Hellboy, right? He's essentially recognized for a character. He's recognized for wearing makeups and broken horns for a picture. I wonder if you guys connect on that level to say, oh, well, people recognize us for having so many pounds of makeup on our face, as opposed to, but for instance, he did Nightmare Alley with Del Toro, and he had no makeup on that. Essentially, he played a human being. And most people are like, looks like Hellboy. I would assume, if they don't know who Ron Perlman is. But do you guys connect on that level or talk about that at all? Just that kind of through line that you both have of like, oh, well, people recognize us for maybe our made up characters as opposed to our human being characters.
Yeah, no, I mean, he when we went into doing Hellboy 1, he had already had a facial career as well. Yeah, he's been known on he had done The Name of the Rose, and he had done children, something with children in the title. What was it? City of Lost Children.
City of Lost Children.
Right, and when he's been made up before, it often kind of resembles. You can still see him through it, sort of
facial structure. Sure.
Yeah, and even Hellboy, you can tell that's Ron Perlman. Yeah. Whereas my makeups have often just been completely unrecognizable.
Right.
So, but he understands the process, and we did commiserate on coming in earlier than everybody else, leaving later than everybody else.
Yeah, right.
In fact, when we did our first day on Hellboy 1, we were in the same makeup trailer, and we'd put in a full day, and now we're all getting like undone and like cleaned off one bit at a time with, rubber bits coming off and paint coming off. And he was all greasy from the oil remover with red splotches around his eyes and around his mouth. And I was all oily and greasy from the remover with blue splotches around my eyes and blue splotches around my mouth. And we kind of like looked at each other, and he looked back at me and he said, 6 days a week for the next 6 months.
Oh my! Just counting down.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay. I'm sorry. You want to?
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask something on the acting front with these scripts that you get and the parts that you get. Do you feel more freedom as like, what am I going to do for this character and how am I going to embody this? Or have you had a lot of experiences where when you meet the director, they already know how they should move, what they should act like? I mean, Del Toro is his own case because I feel like he really understands character. But with maybe acting roles before, was there challenge in trying to find, I guess, your human connection with this character, or something that's not going to resemble I guess the regular human form?
Well, we talk a lot about just developing a voice, right?
Yeah.
And it's substantially tougher to not have dialogue and to have a voice in a film.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you mean, right? Like how do you display your voice and something like that?
Yeah. No. I actually, yes. There are some directors who are more visual effects and more action driven as directors, and some of the way more attention to the actors. But I've never really had a case where somebody is so specific and has everything so mapped out ahead of time that I have to just completely abandon my own instincts and go with his. That's never really happened. It's monsters and creatures on film have been collaborative mostly with most directors, because you come into the room with a set of skills and a set of your own internal instincts. And that's the actor part. It's not just talented elbows. You really come in with a sense of who he is, what he wants, what he fears, what he loves. All those things should be in place. And a direct, I'll often get I do like getting specifics because of if this creature has a certain background or a certain intention that I wasn't totally aware of. I love hearing that from a director. Yes. But then if I throw in something of my own or something that happens in the moment, when the camera rolls and you've got actors interacting with each other, magic can happen that was never scripted. You never know. And it may be verbal dialogue, and there's an awful lot of nonverbal dialogue that happens in those moments.
Sure.
And so you want to let that play out, keep the camera rolling. And that's when a director might say, "Oh gosh, that was fantastic," and he never saw it coming. So that's a good collaborative director.
So you're constantly exploring, I guess, who you're embodying. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Wow. So moving right along to, I think, the next film I'd love to discuss, a favorite for all of us, I think, is Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth. Show us the hands, Doug. Show us the
I love it.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about that experience. Get that call from Guillermo. Maybe how did that kind of kick off to be in this picture?
It came as an email with a script attached saying, "Don't you read this and get back to me by 11 o'clock tonight." So that was the rest of my day, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever read in my life as an actor. And he wanted me to play the Faun character and have a look at the Pale Man as well. And that's this guy. And I thought he was just a cheap ass wanting two parts for the price of one. And that's partially true. but the Faun character was just so beautiful, and I loved him being like a liaison between the real world and this fantasy underworld, and that he was the informant that was telling little Ophelia who she was, where she needed to get back to, and where her origins were, and here's the tasks you have to pass to prove yourself and to bring the portals back to life. And there's a whole lot going on there. And then I heard that it was going to, and then I read the script in English, And then part of his email was, "Oh, it's going to be in the Spanish language." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Now here's where I have to say I can't do it."
Yeah.
So anyway, but I told Guillermo he's got the wrong guy, and he said, "Nope, it has to be you. I wrote this for you." And he said, "You can count to 10 for all I care, and I'll dub it over later, but it's got to be you."
But you did learn phonetically, right? Phonetically, you learned the Spanish iteration of the lines and went through them. Just, I mean, it brought the character to life. I have to say,
a little more than phonetic. I actually, because in phonetic, you would think you hear sounds and you repeat those sounds. And for me, it was actual Spanish script, English script.
Okay.
Break down the sentence structure.
Wow.
I knew exactly what I was saying. Yeah. And I had to also do the same thing with Ophelia's little Ivana Baquero, the actress, her dialogue, so that I could have a conversation that made sense to both of us. Yeah.
Wow.
So now they ended up, because I was so terrified of my voice for that one, and it was not my language, and I did not understand there. I knew that a Spanish speaking actor would find nuances in the language that I couldn't hear with my American ears.
Yeah.
So I was eventually dubbed over, yes, but they didn't do it with a celebrity and tout him as the star of the movie.
Yeah.
That's the big difference, right?
Right.
So but I did end up learning all the language, because I thought when being dubbed over, you want your mouth to move the same as your You want the lip sync to be right, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. You know, that would have looked like a horrible, 1950s Godzilla movie.
I'd love to ask just the experience of the set for something like that, right? Guillermo is notoriously known for creating a world and bringing you into it. I'd love to know just your experience on walking around that set and being in character, because you'll go on YouTube and you type in Doug Jones in makeup or whatever, and you'll see just Doug Jones having casual conversations with the camera in full makeup as the Faun or the Pale Man or whatever. And it's the greatest thing ever, because it's like it makes it real, but at the same time, seeing somebody stand on the set like that is what we dream of, right? Separating the real from the unreal and thriving in that world a little bit as creatives. It's what Stuff of Dreams is made up of. Can you tell us a little bit about the set itself and your experience on that and the movement?
Yeah, well, any Del Toro set is going to be a magical theme park.
Nice.
Because he really loves to rely on practical effects.
Right.
If he can get it done practically, he will. CG comes in when it's something extraordinary that you can't do with your hands.
Right.
So his sets were glorious. The entire house of Captain Vidal's house out in the woods there was built for the movie. The exteriors we filmed up in northern Spain. I think it was Segovia was the area, if I remember correctly. And the entire the exterior of the labyrinth was built out there as well.
Oh my goodness.
Then we did it in studio in Madrid for once you go down the stairs into the labyrinth, that was all in a studio, and the interiors of the house were in the studio as well. So, but he built them to look like we borrowed somebody's farmhouse, and we actually found a labyrinth out in the woods. You never know.
Right.
And when you watch a Del Toro film, if you ever have the time to watch it again with his commentary on the bonus features, you will learn so much about his art direction and his production design, and every little thing that you see visually in that movie has a reason for being there and is a part of the story as much as the actors are. It's if there's a picture hanging on the wall, it's got a backstory of its own. It's got a reason for being there.
And we will go back and revisit it, because I'm telling you, I kicked myself that I didn't bring to the studio. At home, I have my Guillermo Del Toro Criterion box set. I have my Amphibian Man and my Faun and my Funko Pops, essentially, of your characters. I have them at home, and I'm like, why didn't I bring them and show Doug? Just
I got mad at him.
But we'll go back to revisit this on the Criterion. I'm sure that commentary to go into depth of these.
Pan's Labyrinth on the Criterion edition does have. I think that was at our 10th anniversary era that they did that. So they brought me back in to do more. I did an extensive long interview for that Criterion version. Okay. So you'll see more if you watch that bonus feature.
Oh, absolutely. We will. Pan's Labyrinth, moving right along. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you have something? Before we move along.
Yeah.
As an aspiring actor, it's kind of a two-part question. But coming from somebody that I've admired that does, a lot of makeup and a lot of this, what did you think when you saw Jim Carrey, which is another favorite actor of mine, in The Grinch?
Yeah. I thought he was fan-freaking-tastic as the Grinch. I really did.
Because like you said, nobody else was doing it. And then, he kind of did it, It's
really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And was amazing. And, I had met Jim Carrey before on the TV show In Living Color.
Oh, yeah.
Comedy show.
Uh-huh.
I had done 3 episodes of that. The one with Damon Wayans, and then two sketches with Jim Carrey over the course of a couple of seasons.
Do you remember sketches just so I could Google it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
I did. Well, I did sketches. Damon Wayans was with Homie the Clown, and I was a mime.
Yeah. Okay.
He met me in the park. We had a little exchange, and then Jim Carrey, I did 2 sketches with him. One was as his Vera de Milo character, which was that East German, woman.
Oh,
but he didn't hide his masculinity at all.
Yeah.
Had big tails and going, oh, look at my. Anyway, and he mangled me on a bed with him wearing a teddy, and I was wearing silk boxer shorts. It's a long story, but And then I also did a sketch with him. He had another character called Background Guy that would be in the background of interviews in the foreground. Like so it was out in the forest, and some park ranger was being interviewed by a local TV station. In the background was Jim Carrey being bird watching.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And then I come walking through as Bigfoot, and so we end up chasing each other back and forth around in the background. And he ends up getting a chainsaw and hacks me up, and then he was wearing pelts of my fur all during this interview. It was hilarious.
While we're on the kind of the Jim Carrey, I'll piggyback off of that a little bit. We covered the Grinch on our podcast and talked about essentially how he had to hire a CIA agent to
I was about to ask
teach him kind of tactics, right? I remember one of the interviews you did in the Faun costume. You were essentially saying this is one of the most comfortable iterations of things.
It was.
Can you tell me a little bit about when you hear something like that from somebody like Jim Carrey, I felt like I was being buried alive. What has been your experience as sitting around on set for 2 hours while they light the next thing? What's your experience on a set when you're having to wear 20, 30 pounds of makeup and masks and heavy gear?
It's
you can complain to us, Doug. I promise you. To us, you can vent and you can complain to us.
No, I did hear the same thing. I read the same articles about Jim Carrey hiring people to go through torture training and that kind of thing. How do you withstand it all? And at the time, I was thinking, really, Jim?
Oh, really?
but we're all built different psychologically, and what freaks one person out will not freak another person out. You never know what you never know.
True.
And when it comes to so some actors go through a prosthetic makeup application as though they're being waterboarded. It's just absolute torture from start to finish. Okay. And if that's how you feel, then yes, get someone to help calm you down professionally. That's great. Me, I am a very, I think what's in my favor is that I'm not a fidgety person. I don't have to be doing something all the time. And I do not feel restricted or imprisoned when I'm told to sit still for hours at a time.
Claustrophobic.
I get to sit still. It's a gift. I can sit still and I can't do anything. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, because I'm really lazy and I can sit at home and stare at the wall and drool down my mouth.
There we go.
Is it like I can sit here and learn my lines while they're applying 6 hours of makeup and just sit with this character? I would hope. I know this isn't the case, so you don't have to lie to me, Doug. But I would hope that an actor will, in that time period, just be analyzing the character in and out and in and out, and that kind of free time, right, is to just sit there with the character and live inside their skin, quote unquote.
Right. It feels that skin is being applied to.
As that skin is being applied to.
Transformation happens, over a 4 or 5 hour period, and all of a sudden it's like, well, now I am that thing.
Sure.
So I don't blame Jim for going through that. But because what he pulled off on film,
that's what I wanted to hear. Like
the dream, right?
My second question is, before we go with all the other characters, which is the hardest one you ever had to endure?
I was about to ask.
Well.
What do you mean, like makeup, or do you mean performance? Like, what do you do you want to specify? Maybe for like, do you mean like physically? Do you mean like or just overall? Do you feel
overall, but physically mostly? Like, which one was the most, gut wrenching?
I think I fretted and stressed over the Faun and Pan's Labyrinth out of my entire career more than anything else I've ever done in my life.
Was it the pressure or just?
I'm sorry.
Was it the pressure or was it just
the language?
The language.
It was a combination of things, right? A 5-hour makeup application that include walking on stilts and having a huge head.
Huge, yeah.
The horns were hollow and held all of the battery packs and gears that operated my eyebrows and my eyelids, because my eyes were set outside wider than my own. I looked through the tear ducts of the faun.
Wow.
So any eye movement that faun had was puppeteered by people going joysticks. So all of the mechanics of that were heavy.
Yeah.
So it was all packed in my horns. I was heavy. And then with the balancing act on the stilts, the finger extension, so I couldn't really grab anything during the day. I had to be, kind of spoon fed, and it was. So
I'm bringing you back to those days.
That was it.
Meanwhile, I am delivering paragraphs of memorized Spanish dialogue. It's the hardest thing I've ever. So mentally, physically, that was the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life.
Hollywood geek question: did you get to keep anything off the set? Maybe not just Pan's Labyrinth, but any set? Is there something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I was cleaning up my home office yesterday, and I found a plastic bag. I'm like, "What is in this?" I opened it up, and there was like the cut off rubber mask of the Silver Surfer. I'm like, there you are,
original. Wow.
If you guys, by the way, if you guys want to touch on that, I want to continue going with like Crimson Peak and other things. But if you guys want to touch on Silver Surfer at all, I mean, I know that's I mean, it's pretty important, but it's a massive character, even just on a notoriety level, right? It feels like that's something I know the dubbing factor is a big thing, but still the physicality of that character. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Silver Surfer?
The Silver Surfer.
Yeah, not much. It was a treat and an honor to play a Marvel character before Marvel Studios became a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
This was at Fox Studios, and so it was a Fantastic Four sequel. So that had already been established, and the Silver Surfer coming in. So that was like, aside from the Hellboy comic book movies, this being a Marvel comic book movie was like, I better go to a comic book store and look at all the Silver Surfer entertainment I can find.
Yeah. And they're different animals, just even on the story structure side, right? I mean, we're talking about Frank Miller versus a little more light kind of, but that character is so intense.
Yeah.
Pretty deep for a quote unquote comic book character, which we didn't really see at the time, right?
I can't believe that's the Silver Surfer. Right?
Yeah. Well, he was a superhero that came from another planet. He was not an Earthling human who got bit by a spider and became something else.
Yeah.
Right. He was already kind of ethereal and otherworldly.
Sure.
And he exhibited a confidence that I do not have in my real life. So that was the acting challenge for me, was that he's got the power cosmic. Nothing intimidates him. And when I talk, I tend to use my face and my hands a lot.
Yeah. Right.
He doesn't have to. He trusts that he trusts his eyes are getting the story across, and he just can speak with authority.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a tough acting challenge for me.
Awesome. I don't get me wrong. Between the quote unquote gap of the, let's call them the Del Toro lineage, Del Toro projects that you did with them, there's a big gap, and not to discount any of those performances because they're amazing. I mean, like we were talking about The Watch earlier, we were talking about all these great performances. We're even a big fans of you as number 7.
Yes,
on the Benchwarmers. I mean, we love that film. And I had no idea that there was a man in the suit. It was Doug Jones.
That was one of our movie nights recently that we watched that, so we were geeking out about that.
I didn't even know it.
Number 7.
I just watched Benchwarmers again recently. It was on TV, and I was like, this is really funny.
Yes, it's hilarious. But you were on set. I mean, I'm saying you were there with John Lovitz and all these guys just hanging out. Rob Schneider just doing something funny. Okay.
David Spade and John Heater. Yeah.
Yes.
Big fun.
Awesome. I want to talk a little bit about Crimson Peak before we get into my favorite of all of these, which is Shape of Water, which we'll get into. But
yeah, that's the last one.
And please tell us, Doug, I know we're taking advantage of your time a little bit here. I know we've taken more to it, but Crimson Peak. These guys know, most people who know this, my wife and I are big Disney nuts. And we know that Del Toro was attached to do a Haunted Mansion. that they ended up just clashing over. And then he ended up saying, well, I'm taking all of my ideas for the Haunted Mansion that they're not letting me use, and I'm going to make my own, essentially. And that's essentially what Crimson Peak was born out of. But you got to play, you and another actor as well. And I'm so sorry, his name is escaping me right now. We're playing the
Javier Botet.
Javier Botet. Essentially playing all of the ghosts, all of the kind of key figures that we're intrigued by and falling in love with, and the bathtub scene. I mean, just tell us a little bit about the Crimson Peak experience, please.
Yeah, well, oh golly, I love that movie so much.
All of us.
Again, visually and art direction and production design, and all the actors, Mia Wasikowska and Tom Hiddleston and Jessica Chastain, they were all so good. But unfortunately, it was advertised as a scary Halloween horror movie. That's how they were marketing it,
right?
And it was really more of a gothic romance tale.
Yeah, that's the way I find it.
The ghosts were not intimidating. We were actually trying to help.
Right.
Which is very Del Toro, to have the monsters and ghosts and goblins be like, we're the good guys. There's a human in.
Well, have an arc.
Yeah. So, again, the same makeup effects people who did me in Pan's Labyrinth did our makeups for Crimson Peak. That was DDT Efectos Especiales. The winners of the Oscar for Best Makeup for Pan's Labyrinth. So they're renowned and they're wonderful. So I played 2 of the ghost ladies, and Javier Botet played the other 3 that were in this movie. So I was the mother ghost in the black veil at the beginning of the movie, telling him, beware of Crimson Peak. And then later in the film, when Mia Wasikowska's character grows up and gets married and then moves off, and her new home is Crimson Peak, this mansion that she has been lured into a web of hideous, murderous history. The mansion is full of haunted ghosts that are that have been slaughtered there in the past. So I'm in the bathtub ghost scene was like one of my favorite moments ever on film, because she kind of comes around the corner and looks in the bathroom, and there is this red ghost lady you can kind of see through in the bathtub, stark naked. And so I stand up slowly and then like step out of the bathtub and come after her and say, leave this place. So that was great. But the funny bit here for me was that as the mother ghost in the black veil with a dress and a corset, it's like that silhouette was kind of already, feminized, and I thought I can play that well enough. But here I am, a tall, skinny, straight up and down boy, and I'm trying to play an old ghost lady in a bathtub, stark naked. So they transformed me from head to toe. It took about 5 hours to make the transformation with this, pre-sculpted, pre-painted rubber bits. And so they gave me sagging breasts and some more hips, and like, okay, I'm okay. But I thought I better sell the lady bits. Yeah. So here I am at the first take, and I'm getting up out of the bathtub, and I'm really vamping and like, I'm trying to find the lady bits here.
Yeah.
And I step out of the bathtub, and Guillermo says, "Cut, doggy, it's too sexy." I thought, yes, I win. I'm too sexy.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It seems like one of those experiences where we're just gonna have a ball with these characters, with this set. So I think that's great, and then it translates on film. I agree. I think that especially the lady, the bathtub scene. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic piece of cinema, really. So I love it. Great. Now I really want to get into one of your most complex characters to date, and one of my favorites. Our unpopular opinion for most people, my favorite Guillermo Del Toro picture.
Oh, really?
Yeah, genuinely. Which is The Shape of Water.
Yeah.
Amphibian Man in The Shape of Water, right? And I mean, what a picture. Doug, I think you and I can connect that we've already have a little bit in the sense that I love musicals, and this film is not a musical, but boy, does it feel musical. Oh, yeah. Boy, does it feel just aesthetically and tonally as this beautiful, beautiful piece of cinema that kind of caters to those sensibilities as well. But I never thought I'd fall in love with a fish character. I have to tell you, this character is just is extraordinary. Can you tell us a little bit about The Shape of Water, please?
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree with you. I fell in love with the fish character too. and when actually I was working on Crimson Peak when Guillermo Del Toro had me come in for a lunch date with him one day on a day that I was not working.
Okay.
And he said, I came into his office, shut the door, Dougie. And he told me this whole story about The Shape of Water, his next movie he wants to make. And he wanted to pull back from the studio system and do something like a Pan's Labyrinth again, where he's kind of independently making it and telling the story he wants to tell. I was like, oh, this is such good news. I've been wanting you to do another one of those.
Yeah.
And when he told me the storyline of The Shape of Water, I said to him, this will be your next trip to the Oscars. And now, mind you, with 13 nominations, I was right.
Yeah.
And 4 wins, including Best Picture. When have you seen a Best Picture with a monster on the cover?
Right.
I can't remember.
Right.
And getting to play the monster that was on that cover, please.
Oh, yeah.
Like you, this is my favorite movie I've ever been in. The Shape of Water. Because it satisfied the romantic in me as well.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At the end, to have a monster story where the monster ends up getting the girl and they live happily ever
Right.
after. Again, something that doesn't happen often.
Huge.
Yeah. And then you were asking earlier about Del Toro's any director being specific with you.
Right.
This was the one movie of Del Toro's where he was more specific with me than ever before.
Oh, okay.
And he kept reminding me, Dougie, you are the romantic leading man of this movie. Okay.
There's a ballroom sequence with you. I mean, yes, absolutely.
I know.
So.
Right. But he said he specifically did not want Abe Sapien. He didn't want a Doug Jones performance. He wanted Dougie the actor to embody this beast from the wild and make us all believe it and feel it.
Yeah.
So I had to find this natural born in the wild fish man thing that we find out later in the movie is kind of like a river god that does have some supernatural powers to him. And again, confident as all get out, but also an animal in captivity. So what does all that entail? And he's falling in love with a cleaning lady. And what does that entail? And so he did something really smart. Sally Hawkins, who's so gorgeous in this movie.
She's terrific.
And fantastic. Yeah. So he had, because we had that dance sequence to do that you were talking about, where she's an old movie buff lover, and she and her next door neighbor, played by Richard Jenkins, they watch old movies, they do little tap dances on the sofa, so there was a musical movie element to it for sure. And so she has this fantasy in the movie where she goes off into a black and white MGM musical. And there I am dancing. We're Fred Astaire and we're Ginger Rogers, and we're doing a ballroom dance number. So we had to rehearse, neither one of us being professional dancers, we had to rehearse about 3 weeks before the filming started is when I got there. And every day was a dance rehearsal with Sally Hawkins.
Was this film? Where was this filmed in?
That was also Toronto.
Also Toronto.
Yeah, he loves filming there. And so Sally and I got to know each other intimately during those dance rehearsals. It was just the two of us with a choreographer every day. And we both felt the weight and the pressure and the stress of this, how important this movie was to Guillermo, how important it was to, it was going to be Oscar worthy, and we need to make sure we do so we both felt the imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough to pull this off. I'm going to ruin the movie. We both felt the exact
I am so happy. Don't get me wrong. I know it sounds torturous, but I'm so happy to hear you say that. It's important for people. It's important for me. I am now it's important for people like us to know that it happens on every level. It happens on the Guillermo del Toro, Doug Jones level, that you get to set and you're like, what the hell did I just sign up for? Am I going to do it? Oh my gosh, we're out using somebody's money to do this. We're using this actor and that actor. Oh, it's so encouraging. It's so encouraging to know that doesn't go away, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. So Sally and I both suffered from that same imposter syndrome, and we could commiserate with each other. We could laugh together, cry together. I'm having health issues. Me too. Whatever. And it was so bonding. So not only were we learning a dance together, but we were also learning to trust each other. And by the time we got to film, we already had a relationship that we could transform into this romance that was happening on film. And it was the smartest thing he ever did. Talk
about a amazing cast. Talk about I mean, they've gone on record, Sally Hawkins and Octavia Spencer. I remember seeing a video recently saying, "Oh, Doug Jones is a treat. Doug Jones is the sweetest person to work with, and we just love. He's a kind soul." But I also, what I don't think gets a lot of mention is you mentioned Richard Jenkins, Michael Shannon, which is terrific in this film, Michael Stuhlbarg, I mean, just amazing, plethora of amazing actors in this film. Tell us a little bit about that experience, being on set with those guys and having somebody like that to play off of, because you do ultimately in most sequences of the picture. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I was gobsmacked by the talent I was surrounded by, and again, speaking of the Oscars, Sally Hawkins nominated for Best Actress, Richard Jenkins nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and Octavia Spencer nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Yeah, and I was really tickled pink, by the way, though, and I felt like I was totally out of my league being surrounded by these people. But when during award season, before the nominations all came out, Fox Searchlight did me a huge beloved favor. They put me in the For Your Consideration ads in all the trade papers, and a full page ad in the LA Times, and in the Best Actor category, they suggested perhaps Doug Jones.
Absolutely.
Now I knew that the Academy would not vote for a guy in a fish suit.
But it's important. We just talked our last episode on the podcast that we reviewed The Revenant, and we talked about the nonverbal element of acting. We talked about the forefront of that, to be in the forefront. Both you and Sally were in the forefront of nonverbal characters. And they're huge. That's a huge thing to accomplish. And I'll have to say, I promise you, this is a genuine statement coming from me, coming from all of us. Though you had a plethora of amazing actors, like I love Richard Jenkins in Liberal Arts, by the way. His role in that is just a great little indie picture, but his role in that is terrific. And Michael Shannon, I got to meet I was an extra for one day on this set out here in Las Cruces, where I got to meet Michael Shannon. Great person, great people, great actors. But my attention was focused on Amphibian Man. My attention was not drawn away from that, despite the fact of this amazing cast. I was on Amphibian Man the whole time. I was rooting for him. I was rooting for this unorthodox love. I was rooting. Your performance, just held me into this picture, and absolutely deservedly so. I think you should have had an Oscar for that. You should have been on that stage for that. Okay, but
again, politics. We don't talk politics.
Yeah, we don't talk about the Oscar politics, quote unquote. But
that what you're saying is this movie was just a prime example of how dialogue is not all verbal. So much dialogue happens visually, even as human beings, as we converse right now. Facial expression, a tilt of the head, body posturing, gestures, all communicate and can change the words from one meaning to a completely different meaning, the same exact words, by how you deliver them, what visuals you're giving at the same time. So when you take that verbal dialogue away and you've got like a mute janitor lady and a creature from the wild who only makes funny noises, then that communication, that dialogue is nothing but visual. And we fell in love with each other over eating eggs together and playing music and
immensely impressive and immensely important, because I can tell you right now, that's candy to somebody like me, a director and an actor. That's candy to be like these gestures, this tilt of the head, it's candy. Whereas right now, Michael, who is my DP in my films, Michael will look at you and say, "Hey, I like the shadow on Doug's head right now. I like what's surrounding the thing." We're over here like the tilt of the head, and I'm reading Doug's body language. Is he liking the question I'm asking? I mean, I'm just directing the podcast, even just feeling those. That's candy for a director to be like non-verbally how much we can communicate in a story, as opposed to writing. And I'm a mumblecore guy, by the way. I love dialogue.
Yes, he is.
But have learned more and more again just how important non-verbal communication is for a picture. It's crucial. It's immensely crucial.
No, and I remember after even before watching Shape of Water, everybody was recommending it and saying that you're going to just go through an insane experience. But at the time, I was taking a script writing class, and I really wanted to go into that script and see like what it looked like on the page before, going into the film. And that's where my acting question kind of came in, because how do you find the life in these little actions and moments? And obviously going from page to the screen, you could see so much where it wasn't written down, but you embodied it, and you were able to give this performance that people were able to connect with emotionally, but also be scared of, and go through a plethora of just emotional states. So that's where I was wondering, like, how much of how do you find that? And that's just unique. And on your part as an actor, it's just amazing what you're able to do. Again, non-verbally. You don't have to say a thing for us to really want to just either hug that character or run away from it. So.
I'd argue too, just because we're talking about the Oscars, I'd argue, correct me if I'm wrong here, Doug, but it feels like the minute Del Toro won that Oscar that year for Best Directing, that was your Oscar as well. That was a shared.
Absolutely. Yes, I was standing right behind him when he was accepting the award for Best Picture. We all got up on stage.
Right,
with
right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the proudest moment of my life, watching him get the glory that he finally deserved. It was just a highlight that will always remain like the pinnacle of my career, watching him get his.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's amazing. I can spend a substantial amount of time talking about The Shape of Water and more, but I'd love to, just before I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Star Trek. Before we kind of wrap up. So do you want to jump in on any of that? I mean, 64 episodes of the current series. That's about to wrap up of Discovery, and then a few more Star Trek iterations after that. How's the Star Trek train chugging along? How did you jump on this?
Yeah, no, well, it was another random phone call out of the blue. I
got to start answering my calls now.
Exactly. Random phone call from the creature effects folks that were creating the aliens for the new version of Star Trek called Discovery, and that was many like 15 years after Star Trek Enterprise had gone off the air, I guess. It had been that long, maybe. And I was just like, wait, Star Trek? Whoa, wait, that's a franchise and a half, right?
Sign me up.
So then it turned out that once the creature effects people had talked to the showrunner at the time, which was Brian Fuller, he was like, "Can we get him?" And so I was just tickled pink that that's the reaction I got from him. And so I went in and met with Brian Fuller and all the writing staff, and it was just, we fell in love with each other, and I never had to audition for the role, so that's how I got into it. But then now they told me you're going to be a new species called a Kelpian from the planet Kaminar.
That's awesome.
And but you're going to kind of be the Spock of the series. So okay, Spock was a Vulcan, different species. But that's the kind of role that I would have on the bridge. I would be an alien, but with a lot of humanity and a lot of smarts and a lot of encouragement for the humans around me. And
was this shot on the Paramount lot, Doug? Was that your home?
No, it is a Paramount product, yes, but we shot again up in Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah, Canada offers those tax incentives that I wish did.
Tell us about it. Yeah. Texas just isn't there. We're trying to get it there. But no, I only ask about where you shot it because when you're a recurring or not recurring, or when you're one of the main characters in the show, that you're well aware that you're going to make this set your home for the next 5 years or however long you get on this show. What's that turn? Because you're getting off the heels of something like The Shape of Water and doing. I know you've done a lot of TV. Don't get me wrong, but you're going from film where you're going to shoot for 6 months at a peak, and then you'll be off to the next thing. But whereas with a series, maybe now you can do a film in between, but this is your job for however long. What's that change?
It does change your schedule a lot to do a series because the network owns you for the run of that show. And if I wanted, so I had to wait and schedule things for my hiatus between seasons if I wanted to shoot anything else. So, but the one thing I was able to do concurrently with Star Trek has been a recurring role on What We Do in the Shadows.
Right. Great role.
Yes.
And so but what helped is that they both shows film in Toronto. So I was already there.
Oh, great.
Perfect.
And the one show could borrow me when the producers of each show kind of talk to each other. And when we get Doug, you can't have him this day, but you get him that week. whatever. So they worked it out somehow for me to be, do a few episodes here and there on the other show on Shadows.
It also feels like, and I wanted to touch on the Shadows too, because it also feels like you and Taika would be a match made in heaven somehow, which happened, obviously. I'd love to hear about that as well. I mean, both performances, both roles, but but specifically, what's special about what we do in the Shadows is it's not. You have a wig, but you're not.
No, I've been on Shadows. I've done through four different looks.
Yeah, right.
I started as a stark, naked, old, wrinkly vampire with pointy ears and fangs in the very first episode.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was the same guy with clothes on. And then from there, I got burned by the sun and was broken in half. So then I came revived in season 3. I come back and I'm a half a charred body, and then I magically became my beautiful self with a wig on, just the space in a wig, and then from there got burned by the sun again. With
like
a
a
different
circle.
shape of, oh my gosh. So I've been now season 6 of What We Do in the Shadows is currently filming, and I've been asked back for about 3 more episodes.
Congrats.
I was wondering, by the way, we were trying to schedule. You were so kind to be able to schedule this in your busy schedule, and we can cut this out if you want, Doug. But I was wondering, I was like, did Del Toro call him for Frankenstein? Is he off going to do Frankenstein, or is he going to do Shadows? Like, what is he running off to? Because I know he's busy doing something. But I only ask. I wondered what were you going to be shooting in. We're basically
you're not Frankenstein. No.
Okay.
Guillermo had the idea for Frankenstein many years ago. I think he started announcing it to the public.
Like 09 or something, right? This was
it was 08 was the first time I heard about it.
Yeah.
And he did talk to me about playing as Monster then,
yes,
and a few times since then throughout these past 16 years.
Yeah,
but it is. You've seen in the press that the Frankenstein's monster is going to be played by
the saltgrass guy or saltburn guy, Elordi,
Jacob
right?
Elordi.
Jacob Elordi. Yeah. Okay.
So that's fine because I was 40 something when we started talking about it. I'm 60 something now.
You don't look it. You still play Frankenstein's monster by those metrics. Absolutely.
But I'm in a phase of my career, and Guillermo and I talked about this for about 2 days back in June.
Oh, okay.
And I'm at a phase in my career where I'm kind of like wanting to do more humans.
Yeah.
And wanting to wear less rubber and glue.
Sure.
But for Guillermo, I will do anything. If he really wanted me for this, still I would absolutely do it. But But he's going with the younger, hotter generation, and that's totally fine. I'm
also by the same token, I'm also surprised I didn't see you in Nightmare Alley. In a sense,
he tried.
He tried.
Yes, but I was unavailable. I was shooting season 3 of Star Trek Discovery at the time.
Okay.
And season 3 of Star Trek, I was the captain of the Starship Discovery.
Right.
So when you're captain, you're in almost every scene.
Yeah.
And the show would not let me have any time off to shoot Nightmare. I was kind of bummed about that.
Was that the season that I know you recently got an award, right, for best supporting for that role in Star Trek Discovery?
Thanks. I got the Saturn Awards. I was nominated 3 times for Star Trek. I won 2 for season 2 and 3.
Nice.
That's amazing.
And now season 5 has been completed, and that is our final season of Star Trek Discovery. So that starts airing in April on Paramount Plus. So you'll see our
my father is a huge fan, and I remember when I told him that we were going to be having the pleasure of talking to you, he was like, "Oh, so you're going to ask about all these things that are going to happen in season 5? What's going to happen?" I'm like, "No, Dad. No, we're not going to talk about that." But
so when Doug comes to El Paso, we're going to watch Star Trek with your dad. We're going to watch Grease with Sandra. We're going to watch his island films as well. We're just going to screen them together.
That's right.
And at the end, The Shape of Water.
It's a deal.
I have one more film I want to ask you about before we ask you what I think is our final question, kind of collectively. What would you like to finish off with? You got to play, by every cinephile standards, the iconic character of Nosferatu for a picture.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience. I mean, there's been different iterations. Even Bob Eggers is currently doing one, and I mean, there's been different iterations. But we just during our Halloween month, we screened the original.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And covered it on our podcast and talked about just the iconicism behind it and what it set up, what it meant for other pictures after it. Tell us about that. Tell us about the pressure, if any. Tell us about the legacy that you had to kind of essentially follo for the Nosferatu, for the
heavy.
Yeah, for the Count Orlok.
Well, yes, you mentioned Robert Eggers' version of Nosferatu, which is coming right behind us. So
yeah,
it's in public domain now, so anybody can make a Nosferatu movie. So we did ours on an independent low budget, and I think Eggers had a bit more money and a bit more star power with Bill Skarsgård playing the title character. But
no, you're all the star power here, Doug. You're all the star power here.
Well, in our version, what's unique about our Nosferatu is that it is old movie, new movie, kind of blended together. So if you just reviewed it recently, the original silent film from 1922, that is the look and that is the backdrop of our film as well. Scene by scene, it's the same movie, but with sound and dialogue that helps flesh out what the silent movie might have missed out on with verbiage. And all new actors, but but our director created matte shots, backdrop shots from the original movie.
Great.
So every frame of our movie has a green screen element to it. Even if he built part of a set, like a wall and a door frame and furniture in the foreground, some green was filled in with the original set from the original movie.
Wow.
Digitally. So ours is in black and white, and so it could blend old and new together a little bit better. And some scenes were completely nothing but green screen because it was an outdoor shot that had to be filled in completely by the old movie. So I got to play in the same environment that Max Schreck got to play in. And I wore a bit more makeup than he did. I did have a prosthetic that made me a bit more crinkly and a bit older. And with more angular features and pointy ears and the buck teethy dentures, it was the look was you can't recognize me when you look at it.
Sure.
And I did feel a certain amount of pressure to do Max Schreck proud and to honor his performance as my Nosferatu. So, but also I had no choice but to give it a Doug Jones spin as well.
Absolutely.
So I think this movie is an absolute homage to the original film, and I think it's going to be a different vibe than Eggers that's coming.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you feel like the ability to do what you did on Shape of Water was a direct translation into Nosferatu because of the arc, the monster, and the girl? And do you feel like that was something that you connected to?
Always. I mean, it's kind of a monster movie staple to have a young damsel in distress, and the monster connects with them, and it's like, is that a romantic connection?
Right.
But the most typical answer is, oh, it can't. I mean, it might be there, but it can't. They can't do it because they're from different worlds. It'll never work.
Right.
Yeah. And so now in Nosferatu, the role of Ellen, who's the object of my desire that I'm after, she's played by Sarah Carter, who was also a series regular with me in Falling Skies.
Oh, okay.
And she gives some screen magic in this role in Nosferatu. We've had 2 public screenings as like test runs, one in Detroit, one in Dallas, and both went smashingly well, and everybody loved her a lot. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, we live in the world where people you belong to one of 2 camps essentially, and sometimes those worlds, the lines blur between those words, which is, do we really need to remake it? And if we are remaking it, are we paying homage? Are we respecting what came before it? And I think you guys do that beautifully with your iteration of Nosferatu.
And not every movie should be remade. I agree with you.
Yes.
But when you're going from silent film to this era of we have sound,
absolutely.
So why not do that silent film and then add the musical score, add the sound effects, add the voices to those characters that you can actually hear interacting. And our writer, David Lee Fisher, wrote and directed this. And David really gave he honored the story that was being told in the silent film with dialogue that he wrote. It sticks to the story perfectly. Yeah.
Oh, it's an inspiration because you probably don't see this, Doug, but I have a trip to the moon tattoo on my arm, and that's another picture that can be. Let's use the tools that we have at our disposal.
You really would want to?
I would love to make a trip to the moon remake.
No, that shouldn't be touched.
Yeah, well, but as Doug says, the tools that we've garnered in cinema now, could we pay homage to a picture like this and keep its legacy alive and honor somebody like George Méliès but at the same time say, hey, we have the ability to create something cinematic with all of these tools. Let's use it to our disposal. So that's really great. It's a really great perspective to have on a classic. Right. So anything that we can look forward to, Doug, that might already may or may not be in the press or on IMDb. I know you have, I think, like 10 credits listed as upcoming.
Yeah, I know.
But can you tell us anything before we ask our last question? But do you have anything in the works that we can know about per se?
Well, I'll reiterate that season 5 of Star Trek Discovery on Paramount Plus in April. Season 6 of What We Do in the Shadows probably later in the fall, and that's my guess. So they haven't announced dates yet. Nosferatu, like you mentioned, hopefully will get out distributed somewhere. I don't care if it's on Tubi. I just want people to be able to see it.
Yeah.
And then I've got 7 other films that I have finished that are not out yet.
Wow.
Everything, but one of them is a funny one with it's called Operation Taco Gary's.
Okay.
Taco Gary's.
Operation Taco Gary's involves 2 brothers that are on a road trip across the country. One of them is a conspiracy theorist about aliens, and when they get to their destination, it's a taco stand that is the front of an alien operation that I'm the alien.
That's great.
I'm a sucker for those.
That's great.
So it's a very funny movie. It stars Simon Rex from the Scary Movie franchise.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It stars
Simon
Dustin
Rex.
Milligan from Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 brothers, and also Jason Biggs plays a very
great.
notable supporting character in it.
Jason Biggs.
And then, of course, me as the head alien. So
Nice.
That's great.
It's going to be a fun romp.
Doug, I think you're forgetting to mention the Tower Productions film that we're going to do together. That you
And we have the Tower Productions film coming.
Also,
we appreciate that. But the last question we always like to wrap up with.
No, I have one left field question. This is kind of a left field question, and I'm kind of going to put you in the spot.
Oh no.
Let's
I
say
was young and I needed the money.
well, that's my follow-up question. No, the first one is, imagine all your characters have a reunion in a table and they decide to start a rock band. What's the name of that rock band?
And they just to start a rock band?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I'll give you a little bit because I know it's a thinker.
Love it.
But all your characters in the table and they're like, we should start a rock band.
Right.
Which is gonna essentially, I love the question because it's essentially what do you think your career embodies, right? What's the name that embodies your career almost, right?
I would say our band's name is called All These Monsters.
Let's hear it.
Our band is called The Heart of Humanity. Boom.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Tour.
With the mic drop.
I love it.
The Heart of Humanity. That's what we're going to call the episode. The Heart of Humanity.
Austin?
Final question I think we have just collectively. Can you give any advice for storytellers all around, filmmakers, actors, directors, writers? What's some piece of advice you can impart with for people like us who...
Especially me.
Who love it, who give a shit, forgive my part of my French, who give a shit about this industry and this art form enough to care about the stories we tell. Can you give us any insight, any advice for storytellers?
Gosh, I need to have that written down, like my one line of advice written down, because I get asked this all the time, and I'm always like,
no, we get it.
Drink water.
Yeah, no, but anyone in any art form, really, whether it's storytelling, whether it's writing, whether it's directing, acting, lighting, or if you're a painter or a sculptor or or a musician, right, or a dancer,
right?
Any art form, it takes a special courage and perseverance to do.
Yes.
But again, if you have been given those talents from God above, it is our responsibility to use them in some way, shape, or form. And I believe that if he's given us those talents, he'll give us a place to use them.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you go to a movie theater and you see something on the screen, and if you turn on your TV and you see something on the screen, that means that whatever you want to do on that screen, it can be done. Someone else has proven it before you, right?
Yeah,
very true.
So So why shouldn't that be us?
Yeah,
that's how I felt as an actor all this time. That there's no reason, if I see someone else on screen, there's no reason it can't be me, right?
Yeah.
like beautiful advice. That's fantastic. Well, Doug, thank you so much for talking to us on this show. I mean, we couldn't be any more grateful for your time and your insight, your view of the cinematic arts and your contribution to it. We can't thank you enough. And we know there's so much more you're going to continue to contribute to it. So thank you so much for that. And we look forward to hopefully one day developing something that we can bring to you and say, hey, we want Doug Jones to be on this with us to help us tell this story. It would be an honor. We hope we can do that one day.
And thank you for being a wonderful person for all the years. I mean, just for the time you're giving to us and every experience we've heard from everybody, I think just personalities more than half the battle when it comes to any career, especially ours. And thank you for being a kind soul in the industry to welcome people in and just share your talents. Massive
quality to have.
You guys, you're making me all thank you so much.
And
you be good puppies and keep creating, okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
We grew up with you.
And while you're out there, next time you talk to Guillermo and Taika and all these guys, specifically Guillermo, tell him Carlos from El Paso, tell him Tower from El Paso loves him and will hope to one day talk to him and just pick his brain also, because he's a big influence and he was able to give us so many amazing performances by connecting with you. So it's just awesome. So please tell him. Well, you heard it here. Oh, great. Well, you heard it here on the TowerCast podcast. We had the incomparable Doug Jones, very talented, very sweet man who's just an amazing contributor to cinema and storytelling in general. You have seen him, I promise you.
Yes.
He's done such amazing work. And if you haven't seen it, just some of the newer stuff, just go ahead and check it out. All the Star Trek, everything that he listed is amazing work. And it's going to keep coming. So heed his advice, keep creating, keep telling stories. Know that you have a community here with Tower and filmmakers who love you, who support what you're doing, and we just got to keep pushing it. So thank you again. Let's give a round of applause to Doug Jones for being on the show.
For taking your time.
And thank you for tuning into the TowerCast podcast. We look forward to tuning in next week. Next time we have some guests to announce pretty soon as well. Tune into the Watchtower Film Podcast. We're doing our current Oscars kind of edition of things. We're picking Oscar films that we love. So just stay tuned for that. And
what film are we doing next week then?
I believe we're doing The Social Network, but
the big one.
Because and I'm hoping Doug will indulge us right before he logs off here, because we're doing a Oscar series. We decided to collectively, if we got Doug Jones, we said if we get Doug, let's do Shape of Water. We're going to talk. We haven't talked about Shape of Water on the podcast yet, so we're going to be talking about Shape of Water on the Watchtower Film Podcast, and we're hoping, Doug, can you encourage people to check out that episode, and then anything you have to say on the Shape of Water that we can encourage people that you haven't already said. I know. Just give us a little encouragement to tune into that show to see your work.
Oh, well, yes, please watch. Even if I wasn't in The Shape of Water, I would say it's a must-watch movie, because it is kind of like, it's a combination of genres even. It's a monster movie. It's also a love story. It's also historical.
Yes.
It's at a time in the 60s that involves what was going on socially at the time, what was going on internationally at the time with the Russian Cold War. There's so much in this movie to dive into. And you'll exit watching it feeling like a little bit empowered as you watched underdogs come out on top, underdogs that can win whatever they're facing. It'll inspire you. It'll give you some strength in your own life. I believe it.
Beautiful. Well, so stay tuned for that episode, and thank you for tuning into the TowerCast podcast. Good night. Doug, before you hop off, can we ask you for one more favor before can we get a little promo so we can share this episode and make sure we let people know you're going to be on?
You probably noticed my lighting has changed since we started. I had a window.
Why not? They'll all notice.
Yeah.